Welcome everyone to the second week of Artificial Intelligence. I'm excited to be here, and I know that we're all excited. This is the second week, and I want to applaud everyone for taking your time to ensure that you are able to research and to be with us. And so we'll be going into the topic for today. So I'll be handing over moderating to Kiki today. Thank you for joining us, Kiki.
Good afternoon. My name is Ikiola Oluwababalola, and I'm a third-year law student of the University of Ibadan. I will be the moderator for this session. For the purpose of this gathering, address me as Ikiola. Can you all hear me, please? I want virtual communicating. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, that's good. All right, so this is the Artificial Intelligence and Technology of the GIPC internship. And if you are here, you probably have an idea of what artificial intelligence is. Fundamentally, it's a simulation of human intelligence, voice simulation, recognition, computer vision, and in industry, financial sector,
Working on my end. So I don't know if it's the same for others.
Yeah, he's breaking a lot.
Okay, so maybe off and try.
How about now?
Yes.
How about now? It's still breaking.
No, it's clear now.
Okay. So I said this is the Artificial Intelligence and Technology track of the and here you are.
Sorry, Kiki, it's still breaking.
It's still breaking.
Maybe you try to put your video off and try again.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Is it better now?
Yes,
it's better.
All right. So I said this is the Artificial Intelligence and Technology track of the GIIPCC internship. Welcome to the third quarter for this year. If you are here, you have at least a little idea of what artificial intelligence is and how it functions. Fundamentally, artificial intelligence is a simulation of human intelligence by machines, and how it basically encompasses our advancements in natural language, voice simulation and recognition, computer vision, and machine learning is transforming industries like the financial sector, banking, healthcare, automobile, and so on and so forth. So it accelerates innovation, improves user experience, enhances accessibility, and cut costs. But that's just a bit of what artificial intelligence encompasses as a whole. So this program seeks to enhance your already acquired knowledge, regardless of how little it is, via these discussion sessions, team projects, research tasks, and presentations. So I would also like to inform you that registration for the fourth quarter of the GIPCC mentorship session is ongoing. There is also access to 30 minutes of private mentorship with mentors, and then you're encouraged to put your videos on. I can see there are some people here who have their videos on yet. So please, if you don't, put on your video so we can see your faces. And then I would also like to inform you that we are streaming this session live, and you'll get access to the sessions via our YouTube channel, which will be posted on the group later. And I encourage every one of you to edit your names in the correct order. If you have a nickname or just your first name on the screen, please edit it. Your name has to show both your first name and your surname. Also, registration for the GII-PCC end of the year party is ongoing, which will be taking place on the 10th of December on Saturday at Abuja. So if we all got that, let's proceed. So to the mentors, our mentor for today. Can I get a profile of the mentor on the screen, please? Okay, so Mr. Oragbakosi Valentine is a software developer. With over 5 years of software development experience, he has worked with companies like GitStart, WeChain, SprintTrip, etc., where he contributed intensely to projects and led teams to build full-scale solutions. He has experience with Node.js, Ruby on Rails, Rust, Golang, React, Angular, and Python. So let's go on to our presentation. Is the presenter for group 1 already set? The presenter for group 1. Who's presenting for group 1? Can everyone still hear me? Who's presenting for group 1, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I said, who's the presenter for group 1? I want the mentees to respond. No one is saying anything. Who's the group leader for group 1? Any of the members of group 1 can respond. Unmute your mic and say something, please. Okay, so if group 1 is not ready, how about group 2? Who's the presenter for group 2?
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Oh,
Actually, I'm not the. This is group 2 now.
okay.
Yes, this is group 2 now.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know, with your permission, I could proceed.
Come again, please. I didn't get that.
Can you hear me? I said, with your permission, shall I proceed?
Yes, you can proceed.
All right, then. All right. So good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. We're already in the afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. In this session, I want to say a big thank you to the mentors and to everyone that have joined this session, that has joined this session anyway. All right, so for group 2, we were asked to work on a project which was the utilization of AI. Yes, I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, so we were given the topic utilization of AI to solve security challenges. In other words, we're asked to find the nodal points that are actually coalesce between AI and security segment. All right, so now from the first slide, we can see what it means, what security naturally means. Now, security is a broad concept that has multivariated meaning, which means that it differs according to sectors. It's not just limited to, because the typical understanding of the layman is that security generally has to do with maybe when you're dealing with something that has to do with the preservation of lives and properties, and then it has to always involve the army. All right, but in this presented, it's not really about the army. It covers a whole lot of areas which can actually change according to the circumstances and the persons involved. All right, so from state security to private enterprise, it changes So over time, AI has been involved in both physical security and cybersecurity. Now, AI has been consistently integrated into military warfare, reconnaissance, fund monitoring, weather changes, food security, conservation of wildlife, and the security of the lives, status, and property of denizens of the immediate environment of nations and their surroundings. Now, the sectors of application. AI has many applications. There are many areas where AI has been applied. For instance, in the cybersecurity sector, we have through such features as IT asset inventory. AI takes account of range of assets available, exposes threats, and highlights risks of breach predictively, while it also responds to incidents. And of course, the Federal Trade Commission of the United States recently reported to the Congress ways of combating online arms through the use of AI. And that document is accessible on such sites as JD Sopra. All that is just, all right. So the next sector in which it is applied is defense and warfare. Now, AI has also helped in using phase imagery technologies, terrorism risk prediction, and other reconnaissance networks to adapt the military to an autonomous system of weaponry with speed of action and ease. So in some instances also, you can find cases where AI machines have actually been given the power to shoot at sight, in quote, of course, when based on the data sets they've been fed with. Now, the other part is through, it also applies in terms of food security. So with the geophysical tests and data sets derived from the weather updates, AI can help to anticipate risks of natural disasters, plant diseases, and change in the climate. Also, AI may apply in the health sector. And one of the most important innovations was that by, I think, was it the Singapore, yes, some Singaporean scientists, where they created a machine that could actually apprehend risks of endemics, yes, before they even break out. Now, the application of AI into security, these are instances in which AI has been integrated into security. These are just core examples. One is the SUS company, SUS company rather. The SUS company, Shield AI, has developed an AI-based surveillance solution for military personnel. So this technology is driven by HiveMind, a machine learning application that enables unmanned vehicles to progressively learn about the world around them. Effectively, this gives military units out in the field the ability to explore potential life-threatening locations, such as building interiors, tunnels, and caves, with a, just a moment, please, with a substantially reduced risk to human personnel. And the picture is rightly depicted in the next this thing that looks like a drone here. That's what was developed. Now, the second one is UVI, an Israeli startup has developed an artificial intelligence and machine learning product that helps security personnel detect threats by scanning the underside of passing vehicles. So this system now uses strategically angled high-resolution cameras to create a 3D image of anomalies, such as improvised explosive devices, that's IEDs, illegal weapons of any kind. And it also helps to detect those things that actually escape the human eye. Now, how has AI been integrated into the African security? We want to see how instances of how AI has been applied in African security. Now, the first bullet point here says that in at least two respects, AI is already affecting the dynamics of armed conflict and violence in Africa. Now, first, AI-driven surveillance and smart policing platforms are being used to respond to attacks by extremist groups and organized criminal networks. And also the development of AI-powered drones. Now, there was was it recent? Well, of recent anyway. There was a report by the United Nations Security Council as to perhaps the use of AI-powered drones, yes, on the Libyan conflict. And so we can see instances like that. Also, the Zimbabwean government is reportedly deploying face imagery technologies to scan the faces of supposed targets, even though the government has been accused of weaponizing the data gathered oppressively. Now, Also, as part of a smart city initiative, the Kenyan government installed closed-circuit television cameras for surveillance to reduce crime rates and strengthen security against terrorism. All right, so limitations of AI. Now, malicious actors can actually leverage AI by, in the same way IT security professionals do, shrinking the attack surface of their activities and avoid detection. It is called the AI cybersecurity conundrum, which means that AI is not totally exempted from attacks from attacks by hackers. They can be used in two major instances. Number one is that they can leverage on the AI to also use it as a form of reprisal attacks, or in some instances, they may actually bring up decoys that actually give the AI biased data sets that do not actually cohere to what they initially were meant to do. And so the system actually ends up flagging too many different things that it was not actually meant to do. And so this can also be a limitation to AI in security. Now, through the use of mutating malware, data will be manipulated and deliver incorrect results with that malware going unnoticed. Then hackers can foil security algorithms by targeting the data they train on and the warning flags they look for. These false positives mislead the AI, and thus hackers can operate by circumventing the process. Also, in some instances, for instance, there was a recent AI deployment which actually works with shoplifting. It anticipates shoplifting. And one thing that happens is that Black communities may actually be at risk because of the biased data sets they may have been trained with. Definitely, in countries like the United States of America, Black people are more prone to that crime rate. And so in some instances, the system may actually flag off someone as a potential shoplifter, even though the person is not actually one. And so that is how AI can actually be limited when it comes to marginalized communities. Now, also, autonomous weapons can misidentify subjects, just like a software once used by Google, which identified African Americans as gorillas. And I can remember also that there was also an AI that was used by Google at some point to rate women, and it actually gave them a zero. It gave them, I think, a zero score. All right. So these are some instances where AI can actually misidentify objects, and so also giving AI weapons the ability to make decisions without the interference of a human operator has been the concern of AI ethicists, because it can be used by governments, and it can be used by government. It can be used by other non-well-meaning individuals because one thing about AI is that there must actually be an independent human operator. And so if they have given the AI the power to kill, it can actually just shoot a person, and then the right to life is actually just taken away. And so this is one of the major concerns of AI ethicists. Now, also the lack of proactive regulatory frameworks for the use of AI. Now, the absence of these guidelines actually provide a problem for people. And so recently, the US government had to shut down the NSO group in Israel for selling spyware to authoritarian regimes. Now, on to the last part. Now, the recommendations that we have for AI.
Am I the only one who can't hear him anymore? I think we lost him.
No, I can't hear him also. Maybe we can just move to group one.
Okay, So let's move to group 1 till it's back. So is the presenter for group 1 available now? Is any member of group 1 available? Any member of group 1? Is anyone from group 1 on the call? Oh, okay.
Sorry, we can't hear you. Bonono.
I think he's back. You can finish with your presentation if you're back. The presenter for group 2 is back, so I think you should finish up with your presentation if group 1 is not ready yet.
Sorry, the person for group 1, I think he's here. So I think it's Bonolo, but he's having technical issues. Maybe you log out and log back in, or you speak to your second presenter to start the presentation while you sort that out. Okay, so who is the second presenter? Can the person start for group 1? I know Sherry is also here, so I don't know if she would be starting the presentation for group 1 while Bonolo fixes his technical side. Okay. I can see that Elizabeth is also here. Do you want to round up the presentation for Prophet, or you're done with the presentation for your group? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me, ma?
So I think that we can just move to here. Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so I'm sorry, I'm already back, ma.
Okay, please go ahead.
All right. So I'm so sorry, really apologize for whatever happened. I don't know whatever happened. All right, so I don't know where I stopped the other time, but I think I was already on the limitation. Sorry, did you hear me read out the limitations, ma?
I think we stopped hearing you at the recommendations or something.
Okay, the recommendations. All right, ma. All right, so for the recommendations, just briefly. Now, one thing we are recommending is that autonomous weapons should not be allowed to independently take decisions that deal with the right to take life. Definitely, there must be a human operator to be able to review the decisions of the machine. And one of the instances I would like to give is, how does AI actually know the difference between civilians that are running just because of a frenzied panic that happens in a mall, and terrorists that are actually fleeing from military bombardment? So in such instances, it may be very difficult for AI to differentiate, and so this may actually lead to ethical issues. So I think it's very important that there must be an human operator that must be the link, that must be able to review the decisions of the machine, definitely, before it takes action. Then also data processors must be made accountable, very importantly, because there have been many governments that have been accused. For instance, the Zimbabwean government has been accused of using the data of some of its citizens for oppressive regimes. And I think there was one that was released by The Wire recently, talking about the NSO group spyware that has been used to monitor many people, many human rights activists, including Julian Assange himself. All right, so it's very important that data processors must be made accountable. There are data privacy concerns that come with repeat data accumulated by the systems. How data should be processed and handled should be regulated. Then also AI should be used by African governments to combat terrorism and not spy on human rights activists or innocent self-determination agitators that are considered threats by the government. Now also, proactive laws should be passed by legislative bodies. Now, Africa actually falls behind when it comes to AI, when it comes to data protection laws. Now, these are some of the things that we need: proactive laws, not reactive laws. We need proactive laws that actually anticipate danger before they actually come into being. Then also, AI can be used to beneficially secure wildlife from poaching, and also to monitor climate change, which has extensive effects on Africa. Now, by doing this, food security, job security, and environmental security can be guaranteed. And so then we have the body of references, and then it's remains for me to thank you very much for taking out the time to listen to me. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Your presentation was brilliant. So is the presenter for Group 1 available now? Have you been able to sort out your mic issues, Bruno?
Can you hear me, guys, now? Is it better?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I don't know what was happening with my microphone from my side. Thank you for having me. So my name is Bonolo, and I'll be presenting the presentation for Group 1. I'm also the group leader for Group 1 because the presenter, unfortunately, they couldn't make it today. So I had to now take over and fill that role for them. Solomon was supposed to present this presentation for us. So I will begin. Or do you guys have any questions or anything, any comments before I start?
You can proceed, it's fine.
All right, thank you. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is, but not properly.
Okay, not properly. And now?
It's better now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so our group for this week, we covered the utilization of AI and its contribution to socio-economic benefits or challenges. So we covered different aspects for the impacts that AI will have in different economic sectors in Africa. So Africa has been slow in adapting to AI. And I'll cover the challenges and why Africa has been slow in developing the AI systems and AI regulations and AI law in general. So AI can actually be used to develop our different sectors. And while we develop the sectors, the laws can also be developed in developing the sectors. So the different sectors that I'll be tackling will be the health sector, agriculture, education, banking, and public service. So I'll unpack each of these sectors one by one to explain and give an example how AI has benefited these sectors in Africa. But some examples are international examples because we haven't developed. So it's just ideas and suggestions for what Africa can do. So I'll start with AI in agriculture. So there's an upsurge in population causing food demand, and the agricultural sector has now been under pressure because there's too much food being demanded. So farms are not receiving as much assistance as they should be. So it's overburdened, the sector is overburdened with demands. And AI can actually help with agriculture. So to make an example, I will use the Farm Drive app where it was invented in Kenya, which is a startup alternative for small farms, to credit score. So banks don't usually give loans and credit to small farms and small businesses because the assumption is that they cannot afford to pay back those loans. So now the Farm Drive, it's an alternative data and machine learning, to close that gap and support small farms and small businesses and in granting them credit and loans. And the second example will be the sowing app. So this app will basically determine when to plant your seeds, when the soil is fertile, what the weather conditions are, for you to prepare your harvest. So this app is very helpful in guiding farmers when to plant and how to plant. That's the benefit that we are having now with AI in the farming sector. And then to move from agricultural field to healthcare. So we have many challenges in Africa, especially in healthcare. Healthcare is not very efficient, more I can say, especially in South Africa, and it's behind in terms of technology. Hospitals, clinics, they are overburdened with patients. You wait in long lines, long queues. So there isn't much development in terms of AI in the health sector in South Africa. So to make an example of where we headed and an example of an AI system, it's the Sophie bot, which was developed by a Kenyan startup. And the app or the bot basically answers sexual health questions. If you have any questions on reproductive health, sexual health, just sexual health in general, this bot will now provide you with answers, and these are credible answers. And it also gives you the benefit of being and remaining anonymous while asking these questions. So it will curb the long lines and long queues at the hospital, because you can just consult on this little app that will answer the same questions you had for the doctor. So it will prevent long lines and long queues. So that will reduce the overburden structure that the health system is currently facing. And the second example in AI health will be an app called Seeing AI. So this app basically allows you to use your camera, open your camera, and the camera can basically give you a sound, an audio perception of what you are seeing, for the blind and the partially blind. So it describes what the camera is seeing to you as the user. So if you show someone or you show an object, then it will describe what kind of object is this. Hey, there's a car, there's a stop sign, there's this and that. So the AI is now being very helpful in terms of the disabled, which is a very good thing to contribute to for our health sector as well. And the next thing that I'll be covering will be the banking sector, the AI in banking sector. So the banking has evolved lately. Banking has evolved, and it must keep up with the technology. Since these days we have banking apps, it's easy to transfer money from an account to a different account just using your mobile device, as opposed to the past where you'd have to go to the bank and deposit. So AI is now even enforcing this technology and even emphasizing this technology and improving it. So with the research that we made, we have that ALAT, the digital bank, which was launched in 2017 in Nigeria, which targets the simplicity of banking. And you can just open an account on your mobile application, and then the card will be then delivered to you. So now you are also avoiding long queues and overburdening banks again with just opening an account. I mean, something so simple like opening an account should be readily available to you on your phone. So AI is beneficial in terms of that in the banking sector. To make also another alternative example is that also in South Africa, we have Time Bank, which is also an online digital banking system. They don't have offices. You just go to a retail store and then you just go to this machine, punch in your details, or you can do it from your phone and then register, and then the card will be delivered to you, or you'll collect it from any retailers. So that's been helpful in the banking sector. So AI will really benefit Africa in the banking sector, and I think it's very appropriate. And South African fintech company also, they made a platform called Strider, which will provide you with financial education and how you must go about handling your finances and what questions you have in terms of your finances. This platform will then give you that benefit and answer those relevant questions you have. And then for the next slide, we'll be covering AI in education. So AI in education is very important, and we do need AI education because it will then prompt the efficiency of education, efficiency as well as accuracy, because now information is readily available everywhere. If we can compartmentalize our information and then just control it through AI, we can really exploit this technology called artificial intelligence. It can be used for basic things like marking grades. I remember I would have a system where you are back in university, we would have a system where you are taking the exam online and you would punch in your answers and then your results will come out immediately after you've punched out your answers, because they set the system in such a way that they capture the correct answers according to the settings. So that created efficiency, that created, it helped the teachers and the lecturers save time, because the computer system would then mark the student's exam without wasting any time. You'll get it immediately. And it's very accurate because the answers would be set in stone unless you would, have a query and question the machine marking. But it's been helpful. Different universities have been using it. It was introduced back in when we had protests in South Africa in Fees Must Fall. So Fees Must Fall, we had to shut down universities, and then universities created platforms where we can attend virtually online and have such systems running already. So already we've been prepared for this artificial intelligence, even in the education sector, in universities, primary schools and secondary schools, which have been helpful for the efficiency and still carrying on, even though we cannot attend physically, but then AI will create a platform where you can attend physically. I mean, you can attend the lecture or a webinar or whatever workshop you'd have to attend, you'd still be present and you can still interact with the teachers. They would have a little chat board on the side where you can type to the lecturer, like, I have this question, can you please help me? And then they can just respond immediately when they receive your question on the platform. So this AI in assisting in teaching has been very helpful from my personal experience as well as the research we have conducted. So to move on to the next point, which is AI in government or public services. So I'd like to make an example from home because it's more practical and maybe you guys can also relate. So usually governments are overburdened with citizens in the queues, long lines at the queues at Home Affairs. Home Affairs, you just want something so simple such as an ID card, identity card, or a passport. But then they'll tell you, no, come tomorrow because the line was so long, they couldn't attend to everyone because people at Home Affairs are coming for different issues, some at birth certificate, divorce matters, and so forth. So in South Africa, they created a e-portal for Home Affairs. So where you want to collect your ID, they collaborated with major banks, with all the major banks, where you can log on to their website and then apply for your identity card or passport through the banking app. And then all you have to do is go to your bank instead of Home Affairs. So you just do everything with your bank because Home Affairs has your details already. It has, it has your data. So then they would sell this data to the different banks to make it easier for you to then create a passport or an identity card through the banks. So that I appreciated that invention in South Africa because it really lessens the burden that the system faces, because we are faced with a lot of backlogs and systems being offline and employees going on lunch and employees protesting, they can't come to work. So what ends up happening is that you can now do your things properly because employees are not at work and now you can't get a passport. But then with AI, you can still get a passport and an ID without the Home Affairs people being there. So you can just do it through your bank. And then this is better because then it's a private partnership, which is more efficient. I don't like to assume that, but it's how we've accustomed to things now, because private just seems to be more efficient than public sectors, at least here in South Africa. So I've made an ID card via this method and this platform, and it was a success. I waited, I think, 2 weeks until I completed the whole process and received my ID card. And opposed to going and queuing at Home Affairs, it would take more than a month. So that efficiency has improved in that regard. And moving on to the next slide. So the next slide will cover the potential impacts on Africa's socio-economic landscape. So AI it's already assumed and said that it will improve the economy. And according to this second point on the slide, a recent study on the long-term economic impact of AI around the world has the potential to double a country's GDP growth by 2025. So this is probably the next 12, 13 years to double growth. That's a study. So I think we should take it seriously, and we should implement AI if this is the case. If it's got to do with our economy, then the sooner we do it, the better our economy will become in Africa, and the impact will be eminent. So just to round up, so AI will clearly improve our efficiency in the health sectors, in education, in agriculture, and public sectors. So all in all, it will impact our socio-economic status for the positive. So my next slide will cover the challenges. My next two slides, rather, will cover the challenges of using AI in solving socioeconomic problems. So the main challenges of AI is the misconception of like the robot is going to take over the human being. You know, the robot is now going to take our jobs. It's now going to replace 1 and 2 and 3, and all will be left as self-service. But that is not entirely true, because there are a lot of professions which need human interaction and which need the human being to be behind that process or that service. You know, so instead of AI stealing jobs, as the myth suggests, it cannot happen like that, because for AI to operate, it still needs human beings. It still needs human beings to contribute to the system, to update the system, to maintain the system. So if anything, the more AI features are created, the more employment it will create, because it will then create employment for people to maintain these systems, for people to run these systems. For example, a friend of mine was worried because he runs a voiceover company. He was now worried that, is AI now going to overtake my voice company and they're going to use self-automated machines for reading audiobooks now instead of using the human voice? And you discover that not necessarily, because they would still need your voice artists. They would still need to pick up the different accents, pick up the different nuances from human beings. So you still need data from human beings in order to develop AI. And in this development, that's when you are creating jobs, because you are now saying to different voice artists, please, can you provide us with the reading of this, because we want to capture your accent and your voice and the emotions and all of that. So AI still needs human beings in its development. So it's not correct to say that AI will completely overtake human beings and do everything for human beings, because there are some processes that machines cannot replicate. And then the second point of getting students the right skills. So there are gaps in the education system, since this is a new technology and a developing technology. It's not introduced in the syllabus of the education system. It's still in development phase. So it's still not introduced as a course in major schools, major universities rather, and tertiary schools and primary schools and secondary schools. AI is still not introduced as a whole subject. It's still a sub-subject, maybe in technology studies, and not necessarily the subject itself is covered, you know, too extensively. So if we can introduce AI in our education system in Africa, then we will have a better way of understanding and improving and developing AI, because it is through education that you can develop something. If it's not taught in schools, it won't be developed. But if it's taught, more ideas will be coming, dissertations on it, theses, you know, more research will be accumulating from the development and from studying and introducing AI in education. And the third point is the reach. The reach is very concerning of AI, because AI requires internet. It requires an internet connection in order to operate. Most AI systems will require you to be online. And with the digital divide that we face in Africa, it poses a big challenge for us, because according to this fact, the estimation of 267 million individuals are not using the internet in Africa. So that's a major, major challenge. Now, we cannot develop AI if we haven't developed the internet. we would be putting the cart before the horses. Would have to go as the horses and carry the cart. The cart would be the AI. Without developing our internet problems, then we will take a long time to develop AI systems. So that's where we should start. We should start with curbing the digital divide, making sure that everyone has internet connection and has, affordable internet connection, efficient internet connection. In order for us to use these systems and get used to developing these systems, we do need the internet. And the digital divide is currently stopping us from going further into developing these systems. And my last 2 points on the challenges will cover the lack of data. Lack of data is also impactful in our development for AI, because we don't have much data. Then we don't have enough data to develop AI systems or the regulations of AI. But to make an example, South Africa has introduced the POPI Act, which is the protection of personal information. And this protection of personal information basically covers data problems. So you would then, different companies would give you forms to fill in, whether you consent to transfer your data or you consent for different companies to then take your data and then sell it to different companies. So that's the problem with lack of data, which is then politically affected by the politics and the socio-economic statuses of different countries. So if I don't consent to sharing my data, then I'm restricting the development of AI, because I'm now making sure we run out of data to improve our AI. So we need to be open to more acts such as the POPI, which gives you the knowledge and what it means when you consent that different companies can then share your data to other companies who want to develop their own systems through your data. So the last point then will cover almost the previous point I was just mentioning. So ensuring AI is used ethically. So like my previous colleague in group 2 presented, like there'll be malicious threats, malicious hackers, people who are using this data and AI to almost not scam, but to promote their own products using our data systems. They'll take our data and then you'd be overburdened with calls like, hey, are you interested in this product? Are you interested in that product? And then you ask yourself, but where did you get my number? How did you get my number? So if it's used ethically, then it will be more efficient. But if it's not used ethically, people will question, like, is it safe to give my data away? Because I get unsolicited calls from different telemarketers or different companies offering their products. And lastly, to conclude, conclude and recommend, just to close up the argument, and thank you to everyone for listening to my presentation and attending my presentation. And I appreciate the opportunity to present for this platform. So the conclusion is that AI will indeed have a significant impact and will enable us to develop our African countries much faster and be able to keep up with international standards. We are not so far from the international standards. It's just that we lack the infrastructures to develop AI, such as I've mentioned before, the internet, which is a major block to develop technology in Africa, you know, and businesses and organizations need to engage with customers and to develop their own products and optimize their systems. So with AI, we can overcome these challenges. We can definitely improve as a country, and we can have things much more efficiently and easier, you know, to get by and not waste your precious time in queuing at a government institution, waiting for your ID to be published only 6 months later when it's something so simple. So it will save us time, and by saving time, it will create efficiency. So that covers my presentation for today. Thank you to everyone who was listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Bonolo. That was a very detailed analysis. Artificial intelligence really does cut out all of the redundancy associated with bureaucracy in compound socio-economic processes. Going into AI in financial technology, decentralized finance, blockchain technology as a model, the convenience and accessibility that smart contracts offer cuts out most of the need for a legal representative or a finance expert. But despite that, as you rightly said, regardless, you still need a human representative to oversee the process, especially in the situation of a complex transaction. So for the few people who just joined the call, this is the second session of the third quarter of the GIIPCC AI and Technology track. And we're discussing utilizing AI and the Internet of Things to solve socioeconomic and security challenges. Moving on, I would like to call our mentor, Mr. Valentine, to make comments on the presentation. Mr. Valentine, are you on the call?
Yes, good day, everybody. Nice to be here.
Good day.
Can everybody hear me perfectly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah. So I want to thank the speakers. They did a very good job in explaining in details some of the applications of AI in many fields. Just wanted to chip in some things though. From the first speaker, which of course was in group 2, it was they were both quite elaborate actually. I have interest basically in cybersecurity, defense and warfare, and food security, because in recent times, I also add my own 2 cents. In recent times, we've seen the growth of AI basically being used in cybersecurity. For example, if in world of software engineering, if you use tools like GitHub or GitLab or things like that for version control system, they basically use AI to monitor code for that, and they check for vulnerabilities. You could check for vulnerabilities in your code. Maybe things like you leaving your access tokens public, and because people could easily sometimes forget and you just push their access tokens and make it public by mistake. So they could actually use AI to warn you around things like that. And of course, trying to using AI to monitor for server downtimes in case of very large systems. So it's very, very useful in that field. But though, as they also said in the limitations, I think it will not be wise to leave AI to run independently, because AI is still very naive. As does that, it's kind of smart, but it's very fast. You understand? So, but it's still very naive. So, leaving to run independently would cause a lot of problems. Yeah, and the problem will be more prevalent in the areas of defense and warfare, whereby we need a lot of context, and this context cannot just be gotten from the data sets that we feed into the AI system. You understand? We need to put human context into consideration. You understand? Things like, for example, using hostages as barriers in wars and things like that. In this kind of context, AI will not know the kind of context. So having human intervention is very, very, very necessary. And of course, for in case of false positives, it should cause a very, very very serious problem. When you are doing because basically in AI we have what we call want to let me give you a very simple example. I have to diagnose cancer with AI. You understand? You could give a true or false, basically based on the what we call it the logistic regression. I don't know anybody here that final mathematics. You could check out for the logistic regression, and there's an equation for that. So you could just use that to just diagnose if it's true or false based on that equation. And but sometimes this thing could actually lead to false positives. So in case whereby the data 0.5 to 0, you could say it's negative. From 0.51 above 1, it is positive, right? That kind of. But in case whereby it could be 0.49, but it's not entirely negative. It could be positive. There could be a slight, maybe some things happen, and that kind of scenario, we need human intervention to actually intervene and say, oh yeah, this is not. This is a false flag, and of course, once we do that false flag, we can actually update the AI. But of course, there are modern AI systems or modern AI architectures that are helping this problem. They use reinforcement learning. So this kind of AI, they learn from their failures. They just don't feed data. Yeah, they feed data, of course, but when they learn and they fail, they learn from their failures and reinforce themselves. I don't know if you're familiar with this deep mind. I don't know if anybody here follows deep mind. They are stuff here. So they built an AI that could actually play Go, and this AI will be to reinforcement learning. So once the AI makes a mistake, learn from that mistake and make a mistake again. Also, they also build similar AI for building out the 3D protein structures. The 3D protein structure is of course a very, very complex problem because it's very complex to build out 3D protein structures. Because I in my first degree I did biochemistry, so I actually know some of the nitty-gritties and how difficult this thing could be, and very, very stressful. It could take months or even years to build the 3D protein structures. And having AI do in a couple of minutes would totally change the way health research is done and to help us build drugs way, way faster than it actually is currently being done. And yeah, of course, the limitation is still there, and AI is still very naive in the sense that it needs lots and lots and lots of data, and of course, it's basically garbage in, garbage out, like AI does. It just what it feeds in, it plots a graph, and it kind of a complex graph, but under the hood, AI plots a very complex graph and use that graph to make decisions. So you better what you're giving that it feeds back to you. You understand? So yeah. And also the second speaker's point about using AI for I think my major concern here, not concern, sorry. My major area of focus here will be in the banking or finance sector. It's very, very, very important using AI and in banking and finance sector. And of course, making transactions and stock trading. You understand? Because I have friends back in the days. That's what my friends do. They used to use AI to they don't go out, they don't actually trade themselves. They don't use AI bots that monitor the market and it trades for them, that kind of thing. And it's amazing. You just don't do anything, it just trades for you based on the market fluctuations and things like that. And of course, trying to using AI to also flag irregular transactions, because I was talking to one of my friends recently who is a banker, and I was kind of very surprised the way they flag bad transactions. I think working in one Fidelity Bank or so. They actually have to do this manually. They actually have to look at the transaction, read what happened, and try to revert the transaction, other kind of thing. And it's a manual process. I was very, very surprised at the manual process. And I thought that by now will be more automated, but these kind of things now to make flagging transactions more accurate and faster. You understand? So that when you say transaction, the AI can actually just monitor and read the log and flag it, or probably do reversal when it needs to be the reversal and things like that. So I think it's really go a long way in helping banks create more efficient systems. Yeah, and in education, it's the education part of AI it's very very important in the sense of I don't know if AI can actually be used to train students, especially young children who are coming up, and not just train you per se. We could actually have AI that could actually monitor your operations. Like, for example, let me say I also use YouTube now, for example. We use YouTube often. YouTube monitors what you, even TikTok, they do it. They monitor what you watch all the time. They see what you're always watching. And they'll keep on suggesting to you based on your interests. So could actually AI could actually be used in that kind of area also. They could monitor your online activities, look at your interests, what you actually enjoy studying, and actually and they could be feeding you materials or news feeds based on just your interests. And that would really be helpful for people who are looking for materials. You will not really have to search for material all the time because AI will always suggest it to you. And yeah, and I think that's I think yeah, and also once again thank the speakers. I think they did a great job in going into details of this speech. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Your analysis was really amazing. I actually learned a lot from what you said. So it is picture time. Can we all put our videos on? All of the mentees, please put your videos on. We want to see your faces. It's picture time. Yeah, thank you. So if you have any questions for Mr. Valentine, aside the one you submitted as part of your presentation, this would be a really good time to ask. All right, so in the absence of any questions, let's move on to the questions for today. What is the first question here is, what is the extent of data protection in AI applications, and how much public awareness is there for efficient participation by citizens? So, Mr. Valentine, can you please answer that for us?
Okay, yeah.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, you can repeat the question. Yeah.
Okay. So I said, what is the extent of data protection in AI applications, and how much public awareness is there for efficient participation by citizens?
Okay, yeah. So data protection is actually it's actually one of the major concerns, you understand, that Google or all those big tech companies keep facing, right? Because for a good AI, it needs to be fed good amount of data. That's how you build a good AI system. Once there's insufficient data, the AI will be subpar. They just have to see, you understand. So a lot of times they've been on trial, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and the rest, about stealing people's data and using those data to build AI systems. And I think a lot of people are not I think these days people are getting more aware of it, but for the most part, a lot of people are still very not aware of how much data privacy is being breached. You understand, and how these things are being used. They don't use your data to build AI. They also sell your data sometimes. Other companies use your data for building models and things like that. But I think the awareness is still gaining grounds. It's still gaining grounds. Though these days you can actually opt out for Google or I don't know, Facebook looking into your private data. You can actually opt out and limit what they see, like which of the activities they view. I think that's a good direction. But yeah, but for the most part, AI needs a lot of data for it to function and for it to be built very well.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. To the next question, does Africa have enough internet connectivity to optimally use AI technology?
So yeah, of course, we have to use, but not in a very large scale. I'll say in a very minimal scale, we have enough internet to use. Like, I mean, almost everything we use these days is basically built around AI, from the apps we use, social media, basically everything. But on a large scale, we don't, because on a large scale, it requires infrastructure and planning and things like that. For let me give an instance, a smart city, for example, it will be built on AI, obviously. In that kind of scenario, we would obviously, Africans don't have the infrastructure for that kind of smart city, because it takes a lot of money, first of all. Then, of course, lots of we need constant electricity and things like that. So at the moment, we genuinely do not have that kind of infrastructure. But I think as time goes on, we are getting there. I mean, there's more what's the word? More investment coming into Africa, and I think with time we can get there. But at the moment, I think at the large scale, we are not there yet. But at the minimal scale, yes, it's been applied.
So the third question is very similar to the second one. It says, is Africa technically ready to adopt the usage of AI?
Okay, I think Prophet is raising his hand.
I didn't get that. Can you come again, please?
When I said Prophet is raising his hand, I can someone raising their hand. Perhaps someone to say something.
Okay.
So I was intending to ask you a question after you answered the last question.
Oh, okay.
You can just send your question to the chat box while you answer.
Okay, yeah. So technically, I like to believe that we are ready. You understand? Technically, because how will I say this now? Because we need to be ready, even not to be left behind. That's the honest truth. We need to be ready, not to be left behind. And we'll be left like 20 years behind, not even 5 years behind. So African, I believe we are actually, because if you're familiar with the trajectory of growth of technology in Nigeria and how fast we were to adopt things like smartphones and all, you're kind of very, very pretty fast, you understand? So I believe we are actually we have a fertile ground to adopt the technicalities of AI. We have a very fertile ground, not just in case of consumer base, and I think also believe in case of production and making AI systems. I mean, we have fertile ground for both. Yes, so I believe we are there. We are almost there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, you can ask your question now.
Paul, I think you're on mute.
Oh, can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, so the question I wanted to ask is that is based on biotechnology. Now, of course, there is a low level of educational knowledge when it comes. Do you think that biotechnology has a future in Nigeria? And then if it does, do you think that AI can be used to responsibly manage it?
Okay, yeah. For the case of biotechnology, I think for the most part, we are biotech is still in very, very it's in its infancy, to be very honest. But I think with time we can actually adopt biotech, things like GMOs and of course transdermal technology and using nanobots for things like drug delivery and maybe enzyme synthesis and things like that. But using AI to actually manage biotech, I think it's still a far way ahead. There's still so much research being done in that field, because in terms of like biotech, it needs to be very, very certain, because it's human life we are dealing with, you understand? And there are so many bills that need to be passed and things like that, and we need to what's the word for it? We need to be sure that what we're doing is will not have much side effects. Of course, there's always side effects, but will not have much side effects. Let's give an example now. Things like in diabetes patients now, using nanobots to deliver insulin to diabetes patients. So basically, you don't need to take any insulin shots anymore. Once you just have one-time surgery for life. So whenever you are low on insulin, just delivers it to your blood, that kind of thing. Yeah, in theory, is a marvelous idea, but in practice, there could be so many pushbacks. You understand? Things like, how about in failures of nanobot? What if they die? What if their circuits expire or something like that? You understand? So we need to be very, very careful around using AI for this kind of situation, because the worst case scenario is very, very adverse. You understand? So those things are not what you can just hurry around. You need to be very, so it's still a far long way ahead.
Thank you. So does anyone else have a question before we proceed? Anyone else with a question for our mentor? Okay, in the absence of anyone, we've come to the end of today's session. I don't know if Mrs. Juliana would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Babalola, for moderating the session today. I think that was a very amazing style that you used, and the fluency of your words and everything. Thank you very much for your composure also. And I want to say a very big thank you to our mentor, Mr. Valentine. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing from your wealth of experience. It was very good listening to you. And I must commend the mentees for the presentations today. Personally, I learned a lot. This is the third session of AI this year. And I must say that this topic was treated the best this quarter. You people researched very well and the presentation was amazing. So I like the way Prophet presented. It was very calm and he wasn't just reading the slides. He definitely had internalized the presentation and it was amazing. It was amazing. And I must say that you have a very good tone and a very good pitch in your presentation. I think you are just a star. And then I also want to talk to Bonolo. Thank you so much for bringing the South African perspective to the discussion. Also, I loved the way you presented. It was beautiful from the research to the presentation. It was amazing. You didn't also read the slides. You were flowing from inside. So it was clear that you didn't just take a presentation to just read. You had already internalized it. So thank you so much. And to all the mentees, those who put your videos on, I can see Chito's video on. Thank you so much. Please smile for us. Let's that person. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for researching, and I hope that we will see ourselves again. So I hope that we get to see ourselves again next week, Friday. Your topics will be given to you. Please continue to cooperate with one another. And if you notice that your fellow mentee is tired, what I will encourage you to do is to encourage them to push on, because they already signed up for this. So the only thing that you can do is to encourage them to complete it. And with that, I would like to thank Hussein. Thank you for working on the back end, for making sure that everything goes smoothly. Thank you, Babalola, and thank you, Mr. Valentine. Thank you so much for your time. Please, the videos, the pictures that we're taking should be posted on LinkedIn. Write what you learned and then tag Mr. Valentine. Tag Mr. Valentine and tag Gypsy. That's one way that you get to say thank you. And please don't forget that there's the private mentorship session that's available if you want to have one-on-one with your mentors. So you can take advantage of that so that you can interact better. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing day. Take care of yourselves. Oh, bye. Love you all. And you're all looking good. Thank you. Bye.